You are standing inside a residence that has never received an air conditioning bill. Not during this current summer, not during the last one, and not for the past 200 years. Outside, the temperature has reached 92 degrees. Inside, it remains a cool 68. There is no cooling unit humming in any window, no complex ductwork, and no monthly invoice arriving from the utility company. Just a house that was constructed to defeat the heat long before Willis Carrier was even born. I realize that sounds like an impossibility. I believed it was impossible as well. The very first time I stepped into a home like that near Millersburg, Ohio, I spent the initial 20 minutes searching for a thermostat. There was none to be found. The family was simply eating their lunch, as if this were the most normal circumstance in the world. Here is what I need you to grasp before we proceed any further. American households paid an average of $719 in electricity costs between June and September of 2024. That represents the highest figure recorded in a decade. Meanwhile, the Amish families I visited in Holmes County and Lancaster County paid exactly $0 of that. It is the same climate, the same intense heat waves, but different houses. What I am going to demonstrate to you today is not a theoretical idea. It is not just a concept. It is a system that has functioned continuously for 2 centuries. And there is a very specific reason you have never encountered it in a home improvement magazine, a YouTube advertisement, or a contractor's catalog. I will address that reason shortly. But first, I need you to understand the true scale of what has been done to you. Stay until the end, because the final thing I show you was invented in 1851, suppressed by an entire industry, and applies directly to the house you are living in right now, not just to people building from the ground up. Here is the number that should stop you in your tracks. The United States consumes 616 terawatt-hours of electricity every single year just for air conditioning. The entire European Union, which possesses 50% more people than America, uses only 152 terawatt-hours. India, with 4 times the population and temperatures that routinely reach 110 degrees, uses 91 terawatt-hours. Americans spend more on air conditioning than the rest of the entire world combined. If that statistic stopped you cold, hit the like button right now. 1 in 5 American households kept their home at a temperature they themselves described as unsafe or unhealthy for at least 1 month last year because they were terrified of the bill. More than 1 in 3 households reduced or delayed paying for food or essential medication just to cover at least one energy bill. Heat is the #1 climate killer in America. It causes more deaths than tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods combined. If you are sitting in front of a screen right now, and that number stopped you, you already understand why this video exists. Now, the machine you have been told is your only option was not actually invented for you. The modern air conditioner was invented in 1902 by Willis Carrier for a printing company located in Brooklyn, New York. The problem was not human comfort. The problem was that humidity was warping the paper on the printing press. The first residential air conditioning unit was sold in 1913 to a millionaire in Minneapolis. In 1948, there were 74,000 residential units sold in the entire United States. But before we get to how the industry sold this machine to every American household, I need to tell you about the man they destroyed to protect their business. His name was John Gorey. He was a doctor in Apalachicola, Florida in the 1840s. He was watching his patients die from malaria and tropical fever in the summer heat. So, he built a machine that used compressed air to cool a room. It worked. He received a patent for it in 1851. It was the first documented mechanical cooling system in American history. And then, the ice industry got involved. At the time, large companies in New England and the northern states harvested natural ice from lakes, packed it in sawdust, and shipped it south by rail and boat. It was a massive business. The idea that someone could manufacture cold air mechanically without their product was a direct threat to their income. They funded a campaign to ridicule Gorey's invention. They called the idea of artificially cooled air absurd. They made sure that investors stayed away. The Smithsonian documented what happened next. John Gorey died in poverty. He could not find a single backer. His patents expired unused. The first inventor of mechanical cooling was financially destroyed by the industry that stood to lose money if he succeeded. That is not a conspiracy. That is documented history. And that is the same pattern that has kept traditional cooling methods out of your building codes, out of your contractors' conversations, and out of your home improvement store for the past 70 years. Now, let me tell you what the Amish actually do. And I want you to pay attention because this is not folk wisdom. Every element of this system has been studied, measured, and confirmed by university researchers. The first principle is orientation. An Amish home is positioned to minimize afternoon sun exposure on the west wall. The longest walls face north and south. Deciduous trees, trees that lose their leaves in winter, are planted on the south side. In summer, those trees provide full shade. In winter, after the leaves fall, they let the low winter sun through to warm the house naturally. The Amish have understood for 200 years that the angle of the sun changes with the seasons. They built their homes to work with that angle instead of fighting it with electricity. The second principle is thermal mass. This is the one that surprises people the most. The University of Arizona ran a 10-month study comparing a standard wood frame structure and an adobe structure. During that study, outdoor temperatures ranged from 48 degrees Fahrenheit to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. The wood frame structure required mechanical air conditioning all 10 months. The adobe structure maintained an interior temperature of 76 degrees Fahrenheit with 40% less temperature variation and zero mechanical cooling. The difference was mass. Dense materials, stone, adobe, brick, thick concrete, absorb heat slowly during the day and release it slowly at night. The heat that enters those walls at noon arrives at the interior side at midnight, when the outdoor air is already cool. A homesteader I found in a forum documented living in a 24 by 24-foot cabin with 12-inch stone walls and a concrete floor through 21 consecutive days of 90-degree outdoor temperatures. Maximum interior temperature was 79 degrees. No air conditioner, no electric fans, nothing but mass. The Amish walls are thick by design. That is not tradition, that is physics. The third principle is the summer kitchen. When you cook dinner on a modern stove, you are adding between 3,000 and 4,000 BTUs of heat directly into your living space. Your air conditioner then has to remove that heat, which costs you money. The Amish solved this problem 200 years ago by building a separate structure for summer cooking detached or annexed to the main house with its own ventilation. The heat of cooking never enters the main living space. The fourth principle is cross-ventilation. And this one has a very specific sequence that most people get completely wrong. Open your lowest windows on the north side before dawn. That is where the coolest air collects near ground level. Close everything before 9 in the morning, before the outside air begins to warm. Then, in the late afternoon, open only the highest windows on the south side. Hot air rises. When you open an exit point above the accumulated heat and an entry point at the cool ground level on the opposite side, the house breathes by itself. The university documentation on this method shows interior temperatures 8 to 12 degrees cooler than the outdoor air in a well-oriented house using only this sequence. The fifth principle is the basement. The temperature of the ground at 5 to 10 feet below the surface stays between 50 and 73 degrees Fahrenheit year-round in temperate latitudes. The Amish families in Holmes County treat the basement as the primary living space during summer. They eat there, they work there, children play there, and beds come down during heat waves. That is not primitive behavior. That is using a naturally air-conditioned space that costs nothing to operate and never breaks down. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. Everything I am about to show you is in the Amish Home System Guide, link in the description. But stay here, because what comes next is the part that costs nothing and works this weekend. You do not need to rebuild anything. You do not need a contractor. Here is what you can do this week. First, the window sequence. Before sunrise, open your lowest north-facing windows. Close every window and door before 9 in the morning. In the late afternoon, open only the highest south-facing windows. That sequencing alone will drop your interior temperature 5 to 8 degrees compared to leaving windows randomly open or closed. Cost: $0. Second, thermal curtains. Blackout curtains on south and west-facing windows block 90% of the solar heat gain that enters through glass during the day. Each window with a blackout curtain saves you $15 to $30 per month in cooling costs during summer. A good blackout curtain costs $20 to $30. That investment pays for itself in 1 month. Third, thermal mass. You do not need stone walls to get the benefit. 200 to 400 lubs of brick, ceramic tile, or water in sealed containers placed in the hottest room of your house will absorb heat during the day and release it at night when the air is cooler. Stone tile floors in rooms with direct sun exposure work on the same principle. You are retrofitting thermal mass inside a house that was not built with it. Fourth, the exhaust fan method. If you have an attic fan or a box fan in an upper window, run it at night with the lowest windows open on the opposite side of the house. You are flooding the structure with the cool night air, then close everything by 9 in the morning. The cool air is trapped inside. Homesteaders using this method in concrete block houses have documented maintaining 79-degree interiors on 90-degree days using nothing else. Fifth, cook outside from June through August. That is the Amish summer kitchen principle applied to your existing house for $0. Every meal you cook outdoors removes 3,000 to 4,000 BTU of heat that your air conditioner would otherwise have to fight against. That is not a small number across a full summer. Now, I promised you something at the beginning of this video. I promised you a technique that comes from a document most people have never heard of, something buried deep enough that the average homeowner has never encountered it. This is it. 2,500 years ago, the Persian Empire solved the problem of summer heat in desert conditions where temperatures reached 110 degrees Fahrenheit. They built underground channels called qanats that ran beneath their cities and homes. Air entered from above ground, traveled through the underground channels where the earth maintained a constant temperature between 55 and 65 degrees, and rose into the living space cool and dry. Indoor temperatures in Iranian cities using this system were documented as requiring a jacket in the middle of summer. The Romans adapted the same principle for their hypocausts, hollow floors through which cool air circulated in summer and heated air circulated in winter. The system required no fuel in summer and no mechanical parts in either season. This principle has a modern name, an earth tube. You bury PVC pipe 3 to 6 feet below the surface. Air enters from outside at 95 degrees. It travels 30 to 40 linear feet through the pipe. The surrounding earth absorbs the heat. The air enters the house at 65 to 70 degrees. Natural Resources Canada conducted a field study confirming that earth tubes reduce incoming summer air temperature by an average of 12 degrees Fahrenheit. A building in Toronto installed 900 meters of earth tube beneath a 4-story parking structure and eliminated mechanical cooling entirely for that section of the building. The material cost for a single-family home retrofit is $500 to $2,000 in PVC pipe and excavation. The operating cost is zero. There are no moving parts. There is no electricity required. The system works as long as the pipe is in the ground. The Amish did not name it an earth tube. They called it the cellar, the root cellar, the spring house, the cold room. They built their homes over or adjacent to deep underground spaces, precisely because they understood that the earth itself is a temperature buffer. The same earth that stays 55 degrees in February stays 55 degrees in August. Here is what happened to this knowledge in the mainstream American housing market. The HVAC industry generates $24.9 billion per year in the United States and is projected to reach $42.5 billion by 2032. The organizations that write building codes and ventilation standards have close ties to the manufacturers and licensed contractors who depend on mechanical systems. Many state building codes today require mechanical HVAC systems in new residential construction. A passive-only design, even one that demonstrably maintains safe interior temperatures, cannot pass inspection in most states without a licensed engineer's certification that costs thousands of dollars. The same pattern that destroyed John Gorey in 1851 did not end with John Gorey. What the Amish did, and what they continue to do, is build outside those systems. Not because they are radical, but because they never let the dependency take root. They kept building the way that worked. 2 centuries of no AC bill is not a coincidence. It is the result of decisions made at every step of construction that most American builders have been trained, licensed, and financially incentivized to skip. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never mentioned in the catalog. You did not stumble onto this video by accident. You are the kind of person who asks why. Why is a machine invented for a printing press now the only acceptable way to cool a house? Why did the first man who built a better system die, broke, while the ice company thrived? Why do the building codes that govern your home require the most expensive option? Drop your state in the comments right now. Just your state. Because every region in this country has a different combination of humidity, soil, temperature, and sun angle. And in the next video, I am going to map out exactly which of these 5 techniques delivers the highest return, depending on where you live. I want to know where you are watching from. Tell me in the comments if you believe that useful knowledge has been quietly set aside to protect someone else's monthly revenue. Then hit subscribe, because what I covered today about earth tubes and thermal mass is just the surface. The next video goes into the Amish water system, a pressurized household system that has operated continuously since 1887 without a single utility bill, using nothing but gravity and a spring. That is not an exaggeration. That is a document, and I found it. If this story changed the way you look at the modern machines humming in your windows, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds of a more independent future. The next treasure from the past will be revealed soon.